Welcome to the Create Today podcast. I'm your host, Karen Stanley, certified Rapid Transformational Therapist and hypnotherapist. And my passion is helping women heal from the past and learn how to create the life they love one day at a time. And this show is all about how you can do just that in any area of your life that matters to you. Health, finances, business, or relationships. I believe that everyone's story matters because every story can help someone else. Thanks so much for being here. My guest today is Rob Cressy. He is a high-performance coach for entrepreneurs and a dad and a husband. Rob, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so very much. I'm super excited to be jamming with you.
Me too. He's a lot more than just a coach. Let's talk about your entrepreneurial journey first, if I can get those words out. Say that 5 times fast. Where did you start out in business?
Where I started out was with a dream, and I came from corporate America where I was successful selling digital advertising sales, but I didn't wake up every single day looking forward to slinging banner ads and text links. And you can make a ton of money and be very good at something and also not enjoy going to work every single day. And I was that person. And I would just sit there at my desk dreaming of the day in which I could be a full-time creator and just do whatever I wanted. And I finally got to a point where I said, I would regret it for the rest of my life if I didn't give it a shot at making my dreams happen. So I left a $250,000 a year job, cut the cord, burned the boats, and went all in. Went down to zero, and it was now up to me to create the life of my dreams.
That's awesome. That's exactly what this show is all about, as you know. I love that key pivotal thought is that what will I regret? Sometimes that's a really good question for people to ask themselves. Will I regret? What will I regret not doing to help lead them on that path? And how long ago was that?
Over a decade, to the point where I couldn't even tell you the exact date because it all just sort of blends in because I'm a different human now. I just know it's been more than a decade.
Wow, that's incredible. So let's talk about when you're first starting out an entrepreneur, because I think most of my listeners are business owners or want to be. And what are the most important things when you're starting out? Because we talked about before we got started, there's different things that are really super important in every stage, but some take more importance or could help you if you put more importance on specific things at the very beginning. What's been your experience and how do you help entrepreneurs that are just starting out?
So I wasn't this person. So everything that you're going to see or hear, I was not this person a decade ago. I was a work hard, play hard, ad sales party bro. So I was not the entrepreneur and growth coach that you see today. So if we go back to the very beginning, the very first day, the very first morning, this is when my life changed, because for the first time ever, there was no one to tell me what to do, when to wake up. Do I go to the gym? Do I call people? I had no clients, no website, no nothing. And all of a sudden I was like, holy smokes, everything is on me. This is incredible. And for a lot of people, that feeling is, oh my God, everything's on me, because you can take it both ways, the weight of the world or the opportunity of the world. And it blows my mind what I'm about to say, but that was the moment in which I became self-aware. Up until that point, I was 30 years old. No one in my life had ever told me the term self-awareness. K through 12, 4 years of college and a decade in corporate America. And at no point did anybody ever say, hey, Rob, this is what self-awareness was. It wasn't until I went completely out on my own when I realized the thing I later found out, that it was self-awareness. So for me, the foundation is self-awareness and you owning that you are in charge of every single aspect of your life. And where I failed at this for the first 30 plus years of my life is I only filled up 1 or 2 buckets of my life. The money and the business side. Boom, I'm filling those up, but I wasn't living holistically. I wasn't living by design. And once you come from a place of self-awareness, this is the ultimate accountability because you are in charge of everything from your thoughts to your actions, because the next thing happened for me, sitting there at zero, and I'm like, all right, I'm going to audit the success habits of the most successful people in the world, the people I aspire to be like and do things like. What in the world are they doing? And I don't even know why I did this, other than that was just my first inclination. And I kept hearing the same thing. The average CEO reads 60 books a year. The average CEO reads 60 books a year. And I'm sitting there and I was reading zero. I'd never read a book in my life for actually looking to do it. So I saw my dreams on the other side of learning how to create a reading routine. And what this did is it opened up domino number two. Domino one was self-awareness. Domino number two is growth mindset. Because with a growth mindset, you can always learn and improve your situation. And this is very foundational for entrepreneurship, because our life looks like a roller coaster, not a linear line where it's like, oh, there's my path. It's up and down and up and down. It's like, oh my God, this is working. Oh my God, this isn't working. Oh my God, this is working. So with the growth mindset, you're never trapped in a position. With these two foundations, everything for entrepreneurship is possible.
I love that. That is so true. I'm actually reading Mindset right now, Carol Dweck's book. If anybody hasn't read that, you got to stop right now, go order it right now. And I think in the opposite, in case anybody is not really quite sure, what is the opposite of the growth mindset?
Well, the opposite of growth mindset is the fixed mindset, meaning I am trapped in this position, or life happens to me, not for me. And for so many people, there's the outside circumstances of life that happen. And then you create a story for yourself about why it is happening or what you can or cannot do. So a fixed mindset removes ownership. A growth mindset steps into your power.
It's awesome. And then I love how also she said the fixed mindset believes that traits or skills or talent is given or fixed. It is what it is. Well, I was born this way, or I have this one talent and that's all. I found that in my own life because I came from a musical family and everybody was music. I learned how to play the piano when I was 5. All of that, I didn't realize at the time that also made me think that I would never be an athlete. I can't do sports because I do music. We do music in this family. And it was really interesting. I was like, I actually am kind of athletic. I was like, I like running. I did. And, I actually can build muscles and athleticism and, hand-eye coordination, all of that, which is kind of cool. Because also I wanted to point out and ask you, the 10 years of marketing working for someone else was also, it had to have been a building block. And so if anybody is listening is in a job working in corporate America and wishes to move on and become the master of their own destiny, talk about that, how every single thing that you went through gave you something that would help you in the future. Can you pick a few things?
100%. 2 of them exactly. Number 1, sales. When I graduated college from Miami of Ohio with a marketing degree, my dream was to work for an ad agency. So I thought the world was, they're going to hire Rob to be creative, to come up with ideas, to brainstorm. Like, this is what my dream was. This is what I thought that a marketing job was. And instead, I was unemployed after graduating for a year and a half, dead broke, living off my credit card. And finally, I got a job at a Fifth Third Bank call center selling home equity loans inbound in a cube farm, making $10 an hour. I was as far away from my dreams as I humanly could be. And that was the start of my inside sales career for the next 10 years. And I would go from job to job, making slightly more money or a slightly closer commute. And I was just going back and forth all the way up the chain. So what I did learn in a good way is sales. So I was programmed as dialing for dollars. I've never been given a lead in my entire life. So I learned how to sell. So that was number 1. But number 2, and even more importantly, and I just touched on it for a second, I learned what I did not want for my life. that for so many people, when they say, well, why in the world? How do you know when you're going to cut the cord and sort of do your thing? I lived a decade of my life doing not what I loved, the complete opposite of it. So when given the opportunity to do whatever I want, holy smokes, I'm going to take every advantage of it. Because oftentimes it's like, Rob, how in the world do you show up this way every single day? Why are you always so positive? And I'm like, because I'm not working in a Fifth Third Bank call center making $10 an hour. That if you've experienced that, you will literally do everything in your power to never go back there. And there's no hyperbole when I say that I actively remember what that is like. So I'm willing to do everything to not be that person, which is how I created myself into the high-performing entrepreneur and coach that I am today.
That's awesome. But we never want to discount those experiences. What you said is really important. To figure out what you do not want is just as important as figuring out as what you want, right? Would you agree?
100%, because we come from a system that is designed to keep you safe, keep you comfortable, do these things and you will be okay. And I even think back to throughout college, like if I had the knowledge or awareness that I had today, there's no way my path would look anything like it did, because it would have come from such a different place. But we don't have the ability to go backwards and say, oh man, if I'd only changed that. Because imagine if self-awareness was taught early, growth mindset was taught, where a guidance counselor is sitting there with you being like, well, what do you love versus what's realistic? Because that's oftentimes the path of what's realistic and pay the bills versus how would you love to live your life for the next 80 years? Those are two completely different framings, but the system does not tell you this is how we can design your life. Life is typically not designed in the system. It is once you go out of it that you say, wait a second, I don't like the way that this is going. I'm going to create my own path.
So true. I say that all the time. And then I correct myself, because I wish I would have learned some of these things 20 years ago. And had I, and you don't know what else would have changed. You change one thing, you change it all. And it's not necessarily better, worse, better for any of it, because you don't know what you would have changed. I'm not sure that I would have met my husband and then married my husband. You know, it's only 9 years ago. We've learned so much together. I don't know if even I would have even been in that job or in that right place or in his, in his workplace. I don't even know if we would have met. So it's okay to have these experiences that are not your favorite, so that you can learn from them and then start the dreaming process and start developing creating the life that you really love.
And you and I both know this. We look forwards, not backwards, in terms of creating our life, albeit we can learn and create perspective from what we learned. And the difference is dwelling on versus using our learning experiences to propel us forward, as opposed to limiting us.
So true. And I just saw a quote the other day more about those, when you look back at some of the decisions you made when you were younger, or some of those instances and you're just kind of like, ugh, you kind of cringe. I have those stings every once in a while. Ugh. Then to also reframe that and go, man, I've grown so much. Isn't that great that I have those moments where I'm like, ugh, I wish I would have known what I know now. I wish I wouldn't have done X, Y, and Z. And we can also reframe that and go, oh my gosh, it's because I've grown. I'm a different person now. So you can also reframe that and go, all right, that's good. It's good to have those moments from 10 years ago that you kind of make you cringe, because that means you've grown, right?
100%, because that's the beautiful thing of Facebook memories. You sit back and remember the person that you used to be, and you're like, oh my God, I can't believe I was saying that. But it actually inspires me now because of who I was and then who I am now, and how I can actually formulaically teach or coach anyone on how I became that person, because it is the ultimate example of not being this person.
It's so awesome. What is the biggest challenge that you had as you're trying to develop into the best person? You started reading and you quit your job. So you got 1 and 2, you created self-awareness. What was some of your biggest challenges?
There's really only one, and that's myself. That in entrepreneurship, you are your own worst enemy because you spend the majority of the time in your own head. And it's why I am so fanatical about mindset in the designing the story that serves you. And this is one of those things where there's levels to this game, and you oftentimes have to grow to get to the different levels to where you can then conceptualize and understand them, because I couldn't have learned how to design my self-talk if I wasn't self-aware. So I had to go from zero to self-awareness to growth mindset to reading books 30 minutes a day, first thing in the morning for a decade in a row, to slowly, inch by inch by inch by inch, learn the right things, to find out about the new people, to get into the right groups, to join the coaches and coaching programs that can give me the insight and the wisdom and the network of all of the people to start creating these unlocks. Because the way that I like to describe this is it's like building a house or Lego blocks, and each one of these stacks on top of each other. So I can't just start building a house by going to the top and building the roof. As Ed Milet says, the bigger the dreams, the deeper the foundation. You have to build this foundation from self-awareness to growth mindset to the various other levels of the game. And you're not just learning, but you're experiencing this. And certainly with entrepreneurship and the adversity and challenges side of things, you have to learn by doing and continuing to pursue and move forward in all areas of your life. So for example, 75 Hard did not exist for the first probably decade of my entrepreneurial journey. So activating that level of mental toughness and consistency and grit and discipline was not there. But it sure was nice that once I had a decade in, here's this other program to help me get to the next level. And all of these inches are what we're fighting for. And what I've learned in my own experience is the ultimate level, the 1% of the 1%. We are so aware that we are designing the story we tell ourselves, because the story we tell ourselves creates our actions create our results. Therefore, if you have a vision of what you want to create in your life, you reverse it backwards and say, what is the story I can create every single day when used with the power of consistency that can keep me alive on that frequency so that I can counteract the world and myself shooting arrows, self-limiting beliefs, judgment, nonstop at me, trying to stop me from being the best version of who I know I can be.
Yeah. So good. And who was your first client? You who paid you to do what? Because you're doing amazing things now, but I think it's kind of funny to share, like, what was your first income?
So I left my old job to create a sports blog called Bacon Sports, and it was a combination of sports and comedy, and we created original content. So for me, my first client was actually myself. You'll love this because I came from an advertising world where we monetized websites. So I, of all people, knew how a website makes money. But at the same time, I knew the industry was going backwards because I'm going to date myself. Everything was going from desktop to mobile in the ad inventory. So for a large majority of the time, it was like 90% of internet was on desktop, 10% mobile. And now if you look, anyone with Google Analytics, you're probably sitting there 65, 75, 85% mobile. Well, when you're selling digital inventory, desktop monetize significantly easier than mobile at a higher rate. So I knew this, and I was watching the inventory of publishers shift. And all of a sudden, technology started to get better to where advertising or media publishers used to sell based on demographic. Like, oh, I'm a sports website, I can help you get to male 18 to 35. Well, then technology just said, well, why don't we just aggregate all of those together and you can buy the entire internet from there. So it's a very specific thing, but we'll get to the point of this. So I set to build a media company not built on an advertising model. The problem was everyone was built on that model. So how do you create one that isn't that? I did that for 3 years trying to figure out what's the revenue model. And the answer was, I did not find a sustainable one. So you know what I did? I turned myself into my first client saying, All right. For the last 3 years, we've created thousands of articles, videos, podcasts, and social media marketing, engaging sports fans. And it's when I turned my sports blog into a sports content agency that helped brands market to sports fans. Because who better to help them than someone who's just spent the last 3 years marketing to sports fans? Because who knows them better than us? Because we are them. And that was a massive light bulb opportunity for me, because you always want to say, well, who have you worked with? And all I had to do is open up the book and be like, here's what we've done for the last 3 years.
Awesome. I didn't know if you knew this, but I've been in marketing for a long time too. And I'm older than you. So it's okay. You don't have to date. You don't worry about dating yourself. I'll always be older. And so I know exactly what you're talking about. And that is so fun. Do you still do anything sports focused or sports content focused still, or have you completely just kind of gone away from that?
Well, I'll give you both sides of this answer. It's not as simple as that. Welcome to the world of entrepreneurship.
Yep.
Because you know what's not in the entrepreneurship handbook for dummies? That you wake up one day and a global pandemic comes and it's a Thursday in March and you're ready for March Madness to happen the next day. And then a global pandemic comes and it shuts down the sports world for an entire year.
That's true.
I had just built for the last decade my entire career and dream in the world of sports. And literally in the blink of an eye, something unfathomable, sports no longer exists for an entire year. And you're like, I help brands market to sports fans and there's no sports. So where do the brand dollars go?
Gosh.
Right? So my entire everything that I did no longer existed. So all of the companies in every aspect of marketing for sports fans is laying people off. Their jobs no longer exist. They can't even get a job because the other companies didn't. Right. So I sat there and I had a very pivotal moment in my life. I said, I can either die like the rest of the industry, because I've always been forward thinking enough to be able to see where things are going. So even though I didn't have the answer for how to build a media company without advertising, I knew I wasn't building it on that, because that was dying. Once again, I saw that the sports industry was dying. And what was I going to do? Keep pushing forward or step into my true calling of being a coach? And it's interesting. I never in my entire life set out to become a coach. I just lived like one for a decade. And I was hired as a high performance coach for a sales team in New York to help make them better at business by being better at life. I had no website, no offering, nothing. The CEO followed me on Instagram and saw the way that I lived and said, Rob, will you help show my team how to do this? That happened a few times. Boom, here comes the global pandemic. And I realized there's always Rob, the sports guy, but there was never Rob outside of sports, despite the fact that I was starting to be hired as a coach. So now I had an opportunity. Die like the rest of the sports industry, or double down on Rob Cressy, the coach. So that's what I've been doing. And it's a long-winded way of saying, am I still actively doing anything in sports? No and yes. I hosted a sports betting podcast for the last 3 years. And when my contract ended, I intentionally did not go back into sports, because if the universe wanted me in sports, I would be back in there. But of course, the way that the universe works, every now and then people are like, Rob, can you help me market to sports fans? So let's say it's in the background with me putting no attention on it, because I actually love helping people more than I do the world of sports, despite the fact that my entire dream was built around sports.
Yes, I did not see that chapter about the global pandemic in the entrepreneurial handbook. It was wild. Wow. I didn't realize that's what happened. Is that right then when everything shut down? And I want to go back to 75 Hard in case any of my listeners don't know what 75 Hard is. You can find it at 75hard.com. But what is the first time you did the 75 Hard program? Do you remember when that was? What year that was?
Of course, I could never forget, because it changed my life. I couldn't tell you the specific year, because as an entrepreneur, every day is pretty much the same for me. It's just like What day of the week is it? I don't know, because I'm very habitual in routines and everything that I do. But I know it was the second month after Andy originally debuted it, because I was sitting there on Siesta Key Beach in Sarasota, Florida, listening to his podcast for the second time. And you and I are both a part of the Arte Syndicate, Andy Frisella and Ed Milet's entrepreneurship group, the best in the world. And
100%.
we run with the best, highest performing people in the world. So when Andy originally created 75 Hard, the mental toughness program, there were a few people that I knew that were doing it. And man, it was so intimidating. So I listened to Andy's podcast once. There is no content about this other than one podcast. I'm following the people on Instagram doing it. I would say they look like they're dying. They're like, this is the hardest thing I've ever seen. We don't know anybody else doing this. And just with the levels that we play at, I'm sitting there on Siesta Key Beach and I listened to the podcast for a second time and I do not want to do it. I was like, this sounds terrible. I live in Chicago at the time. I believe it's March. So it's about to be summertime shy. There's Lollapalooza, Cubs games, street festivals. I still like to go out with my friends and have fun. Every reason why I should not do it. And then this little voice comes into my head and says, oh, that's cute, Rob. I thought you were all in on your dreams. And here's this thing from your mentor, guaranteed to turn you into the best version of yourself. And you're telling me you're not going to do this? And I sat there, I was like, oh my goodness, I can't believe this is what I'm doing. And for the reason that I did not want to do it, I did it because I saw it as a sign of weakness. That if I'm all in and here's a thing that says you'll be the best, I got to do it.
You got to do it. It will change your life. Absolutely. 100%. The first time John and I did it was 2020. And then the 76th day was when everything shut down on May 15th, 2020. Pretty crazy. And we didn't have a gym and there was no, you couldn't buy any equipment. It was all sold out. And I ordered some bands, and they came 3 months later, straight from China. I never even got them. And so I could feel the difference when I'm on 75 hard and then when I wasn't on, and then I had all these excuses came back of why I can't. And we do a few walks here and there and a yoga outside, a few things, right? But I totally trashed my normal habits. And I found myself completely imploding. And then we finally found a private gym that was open and they would let us in. It was such a blessing. But I want to touch on habits and how every day you have created habits and how important those are. And maybe when somebody's not sure, like if they're really not sure where to start, they know they want good habits. They know they want to succeed. They know they have big dreams and goals. But let's talk about the importance of habits. And then let's take a look at what you coach your clients on where to start and what's the most important thing.
So let's start with where to start. And it's definitely with self-awareness. Once again, it's going to be the theme that keeps on coming up. So you understanding that you are in control of every aspect of your life. So habits are there to help us create more of what we would love in our life. And one of the biggest fallacies is that the creation of habits or a morning routine or an evening routine has to be hard or rigid. That's not true. For a lot of people, it's just foreign because they've never done it before. And I know this being the person who lived the majority of my life without any structure, habits, routines, or anything like this. Because a lot of people think that they're going to go from waking up at 7:30 in the morning to I'm going to be like everybody else and wake up at 5 a.m. and go right to the gym. I tried that for a week. It was terrible. You know why? Because you miss 2.5 hours of sleep. It's just like you become a zombie. But you know what I learned? And this is a simple tip early on for anybody who wants to start waking up earlier, is it's all about the micro So I was waking up at 7:30, and the average CEO, they're getting all this stuff done early in the morning. So success leaves breadcrumbs. So how many times do you have to hear something before you implement it yourself? It doesn't mean you have to do everything that everybody says. But with the growth mindset, you can say, let me try this on for size for 1 month. See if there's something here. I'll keep it if I like it. I'll discard if I don't. And this became my mindset for the creation of habits. And I really learned this perspective from Tim Ferriss. Way back in the day, he created the 4-Hour Work Week, but then his podcasting is big into experimenting. So a lot of what I do is modeling, not to become someone, but if someone's like, hey, this has worked for me, I'll try it out. And once you come from that position, we'll just do one thing at a time. For me, the first thing was reading for 30 minutes first thing in the morning. Once you do that, you just start Lego blocking on top of it where you're like, oh, what's this meditation thing? What's this journaling thing? Rinse and repeat.
Nice. How long did you do or recommend when you start one new habit, doing it at the micro level, and you decided on reading every single morning? How long did you do that until you stacked another habit on top? And what do you recommend?
It was until I heard something enough times before I finally implemented it. The great example is meditation. So for me, I wasn't woo-woo. I saw meditation as this woo-woo thing. So I probably had to hear about meditation, no joke, 50 times. Finally, I said, listen, I'll give it a shot. So I just signed up for Headspace and I was like, I'll give it 10 minutes a day. So with this, I don't encourage anyone trying to like put 7 of these in a row. My entire personal growth journey happened over an evolution of a decade. So 7:30 was 7:27 in terms of waking up. Why? Because you won't miss 3 minutes. So imagine if earlier just means 1 minute earlier or 3 minutes earlier or 7 minutes earlier. So now you can start looking for the inches in your life. I'm going to wake up 2 minutes earlier here. I'll meditate for 5 minutes here and I'll read. And then slowly you read, you learn something, you implement, you try. And the next thing you know, a decade later, you've got a morning routine that you love.
That's brilliant. Think about it in 2 minutes. What can I add 3 minutes? Or, so it's not so much. Like you're saying, you just took away 2.5 hours of sleep. That's never going to work out. It's too big of a shift. Love that. And then about the coaching that you do and your clients right now, do most of them come to you with some good habits that you're stacking on top of, or do most of them really need to start out with one habit?
Most of them are very successful in business to begin with. They're good people who are high performing in several areas of their life. But I believe, and so do many people, in holistic success. There's plenty of billionaires who are terrible people who have no relationships all around them.
It's true.
So is the metric of success how much money you have, or is it designing a life you love? And for so many people that I work with, they've invested in their business, but not invested in themselves. And they need to, or not need to, they get to learn these things and experience them for themselves. They've never actually asked themselves the question, how would you like the first hour of your morning to go? Most people wake up, jump on their phone, turn on the news, start checking emails. So there is no designed growth in their life. And one of the things that is been a cheat code for me that I'll share with you that'll help everybody else is when I was starting out in my entrepreneurial journey, I asked myself, if I make $0 today or this week or this month, this year, how can I still guarantee that I'm growing and making progress? That I don't want my financial number to be the only metric of my growth. And I said, there's 2 things no one can ever take from you. Number 1, what you learn, and number 2, your mindset. So I asked myself another question. What will help me accomplish my goals faster, positivity or negativity? Positivity, of course. Negativity is going to take you further away from where you want to go. So this became a binary equation, a 1 or a 0. Positivity is a 1 in my life. Negativity is a 0. Therefore, negative inputs, negative people, and anything negative in my life does not exist. Well, this is how I became the leader of Team Good Vibes and show up the way that I do, because it actually just makes logical sense. Why would I have negative stuff in my life if I'm on a journey to make my dreams happen? And then number two becomes, if you can't take away what you learn, then it makes sense for me to stack my personal growth first thing in the morning, because if something's important enough, you will always find time to make it happen. When is there always time first thing in the morning? Because we know what it's like if you try and work out at 4 or 5 o'clock or read at 9 p.m. Maybe you get tickets to a game, maybe a friend's in town, that if you throw things later, there's more excuses. But if you do things earlier, then you are guaranteed to be better today than you were yesterday. From that simple framework, my entire life has evolved into becoming a high performer because I've designed it that way. So when I'm working with all of my clients, what I really start with is, what would you love more of in your life? Oh, you know what? I would like some time to read and drink my coffee or to work out. That so many of these things, which seem so common, working out, reading, meditating, journaling, spending time to create or do what you want, gardening, being with your husband or your wife, or going for walks with your dog. They're not hard, but we live in a world that says, open your phone, jump on email, jump on social media, news, fear, judgment, self-limiting beliefs, comparison. How about we just invest the first hour of the day for ourselves, shut off the world and say, listen, once you turn on your phone or your TV, everything's still going to be there. So the reason I'm so fanatical about my morning routine and I protect it so much is because I am in charge of every single aspect of it. So I really help my clients design a life that they love every step of the way, because they are in control, not the world, not their job, not their circumstances.
Smart. So smart. I want to, because I grew up thinking I can do anything. I never really understood people that say women can't, achieve what men can achieve. I'm like, oh, well, I never had any evidence of that in my life. In marketing, it was a huge benefit to be me. And I never thought that. I never experienced that. I know it exists. I just never personally experienced that. However, I found later that you could have a fixed mindset in certain areas. So whether it was my career, my relationships, I actually gained a fixed mindset after a horrible divorce. And then I gained a fixed mindset after I went bankrupt and I foreclosed on my house and I repoed my car, and everything just crashed and burned to the ground, all in 2008, which everybody remembers as a wonderful year. And then, 2008 to 2009. And so I'd like to touch on that because you said, I don't allow anything negative. And also, you can't not have anything negative. I mean, we have family members that we love that do not have a growth mindset. We have things, you know what I'm saying? So when there is an outside negative force, you can't decimate all of them. It is going to happen sometimes. You have a negative thought. How do you reframe that? And how do you train yourself to do the reframe? Or how do you categorize it? Do you say reframing?
Yeah, so this will be a mastery level concept, and I know you know a lot of this, and it's around shrinking your dispersion, meaning how long does something stay with you in terms of the negative? Because you're right. It doesn't mean that I'm immune to these things, because the reason I am this way is because my self-talk can be so negative as an entrepreneur, because I have not yet created where I want to go. But that's also what makes us the best performing people in the world, because there's the term blissful dissatisfaction, where we're both happy and dissatisfied. We're happy with all we're created, but we're dissatisfied because we know there's more impact that we can create for ourselves. So I'll break these down a few different ways. Number one, audit your inputs. This to me is the game changer of all game changers. If they say, Rob, what is one of your superpowers? It's my ability to audit my inputs. Why? Because just the simple fact of, if you watch the news or turn on social media or do certain things, you're now going to get flooded with certain inputs. So it is why during the pandemic, I listened to more Bob Marley than almost anybody in the world, Why? Because I wanted good vibes going through my head over and over and over again, knowing that the entire world was crashing and burning at the same time. I was not going to live in that world. I was going to design myself in this. Doesn't mean I'm showing a blind eye, but we can audit what we're doing with this. And for so many people, let's say you lose a client or you get in an argument with somebody. How long that negative story stays in your head is what shrinking your dispersion is all about. So for a lot of people, this big thing, and there's levels to this, right? Maybe your Amazon package gets stolen versus somebody hits your car, breaks in, and your house is on fire. And you're like, oh my God, two different levels.
Totally.
We understand some things might stay with you a little bit longer, but the more that you can be aware of this. So step one, awareness. What's that voice or that negative thing in my head? A lot of people, they know it, and they feel it, but they don't have the self-awareness to recognize that the story they're telling themselves is not one that serves them. Because even if your car gets broken into, somebody else down the street just walking, it's just like, whatever. So we are attached to a personal story about, that's my car, that's going to cost me this much. How am I going to get to work? So how long does that stay? Why is this happening to me? Oh my God, I just fixed the tire yesterday. So we can start stacking these stories. So the key becomes your awareness of the story. And then you, like you said, reframing, how long do I allow it to stay with me? The better you get at this, the shorter it stays with you. And the way that that happens is by having tools at your creator tool belt that says, step one, and this story I'm telling myself about this experience that sucks, that's not serving me. Step one. Step two, what is the action I am going to take to remove myself from that story? So for myself, I know if something happens on the client side and that loop is just happening in my head, I know there's a few things I'm going to do. Number one, change your environment. So if you lost a client and you're sitting at your desk, let's remove ourselves from that desk. Number two, move your body. So not only am I going to leave my studio, I'm going to go take a walk outside because now I'm moving here. Number three, I'm going to throw on music to get new inputs in. So now I've left where I am, I'm moving my body, and now I'm listening to Bob Marley, and I come back 15 minutes later, and I've changed my physical and mental state to where, all right, that's how things were going. Let me just say, I'm going to drop this right now, and I'm going to move on. And maybe it won't be as simple as just doing this once for 15 minutes, but this is where the levels to the game come, where you can go from one week to one day to a few hours to a few minutes, because the inverse is where most people get into trouble, is where the one thing goes from 1 hour to 1 day to 1 week to 1 month to their entire life, becomes this fixed mindset story of why me and how is this happening?
So true. Did you ever read Executive Toughness?
By Jason Selk, I believe it was. Yes.
Yes, so good. And he talks about that exact thing. And he says, give yourself 60 seconds and then switch the thought to something almost identical to what you just said. I just want to reiterate it because it's really smart. What's one thing that I can do to make the situation better? One thing. And then you're automatically redirected. I always think, like, I always call my, my inner voice, when she's negative, I call her my inner bitch. Andy Frisella calls it the bitch voice. It's so funny because I've been calling her an inner bitch forever. And when that starts on me, and I just always think of what's redirecting. You have a toddler now. It's like redirecting your toddler.
Yeah.
How old is your daughter now?
I have a son who is 2.
Oh, son. I'm sorry. He's a boy. I forgot. I apologize. So your son is 2. You constantly have to redirect all the time, right?
Nonstop.
And I think our brains are just like that. It's just 2-year-olds are the physical manifestation of what's going on in our brain.
So let me ask you a question that might be on the mind of some people. Rob and Karen, it's not that easy. You don't get it. I'm different. My circumstances, because this is somehow we're different than most people, that we can look at fear, judgment, pain, monsters, challenges, obstacles, adversity, And somehow we're different or trained in all of this, which aside from the fact that I told everybody that I started at zero and I wasn't this person, but what do you say to this? Because it's the biggest scapegoat that people say that somehow we don't feel these things like everybody else does.
You want me to answer?
Yes.
Did you know that 99% of people feel that they're different from everybody else? So if everybody thinks that they're relatively, almost every single person thinks that they're different, then everybody's the same because everybody feels like they're different. That's my first answer. And the other two, the most common reason why people suffer are they don't believe that A, they're good enough, or B, what they want is not available to them because of insert circumstance, either from your background, from the abuse, trauma you've had, insert, I was poor, I didn't go to college. There's so many. Those are all circumstantial. The evidence keeps building. So all it is the story. What they're saying is the story. So you've taken that example of my car gets broken in, they took all the tires, bashed all the windows. That's one example of a story becoming your actual main neural pathway, a core belief. When we have stacking, like habit stacking, we've got story stacking from birth. And we have this trauma that happened and this thing, and this teacher told me this. And then that person, like I tried out for the 7th grade, basketball team, and I'm freaking the tallest girl in school, right? I didn't make it. So therefore, there's the belief. That's where it started. I don't do sports. I'm a musician. So you stack another one. Well, I missed that basket. Well, I didn't get called to do dodgeball. I'm making shit up, but just to make examples of story plus story plus story plus story plus story. And then that becomes a core belief. And here's the best part. You can change them. So just because this story you've been telling yourself for 40 years has made you say, this is truth, this is a fact now, you can change your core beliefs. That's what I love doing. What's your answer?
I'll yes in what you just said. It does not mean we do not feel the same pain. We just have a system or process for how we can create through it. Because for most people, they let the story be the thing versus I just shared 3 things that I do every single time something like this happens. So I might have to keep doing this over and over and over and over again to work myself through the process, to get myself through the process of it. So I am open and aware enough to know that I'm in control of every aspect of my life, including my thoughts. So if they are not serving me, what is my system or process? So if you sit there and say, I don't have a system or process for what to do, when the times are the toughest, the challenges that I have, there's the hole in the boat. You can either complain that you don't have this, or you can do something about it. And I often say, it doesn't make it any easier. It just means we know what to do to move forward past it.
And it's just practice. And I was not good at this at all. I still struggle with that inner bitch sometimes gets in my brain. And so it's not a snap your fingers and you're always positive, Rob. It doesn't happen overnight. You can't just magically go flip the switch from this crap happened to me and boom, everything's great. Everything is awesome. Like the Lego movie. Right? It's just a practice. It's just a habit you can build on.
Here's the simplest example of it. And this from 75 Hard. I would always get my first workout in the morning. So the alarm goes off and it's 5 a.m. I'm living in Chicago. It's 10 degrees outside. What percentage of me wanted to go work out? 0%. 100 times out of 100. That was challenging. I did the Live Hard program. So how many times in a row was the freezing cold shower hard? 100 out of 100. But you get more accustomed to taking the action by taking the action. It didn't make it any easier that I was waking up at 5 a.m. and working it out. But I know I did it yesterday. I can do it again today. And the same is true for this adversity mindset. It happened yesterday. I can do it again today. It happened before. I can do it again. And you just keep doing it, because in Arte, we hear this all the time. It's like, oh, a few bad things happened in my day. How do you deal with this? And we all sit here and we're like, welcome to our entire life, where it is a nonstop every day of challenges. Therefore, overcome, because we are more accustomed to taking action, not living in the story of what the bad thing is that's happening.
Well, that's the other thing. Before we wind up, it's so important to have somebody around you. That's the other thing that successful people, they are leaving those breadcrumbs. They have, how many times did I personally have to listen to, you become the 5 person you surround yourself. You become the 5 person. Like, how many times did I might have heard that 1,000 times before I joined Arete, completely changed my circle of friends, my internal closest friends. It's so funny and so important. And how important has that been? And how important is that when you're coaching, entrepreneurs?
As Tim Grover says in Relentless, everything is labeled number 1 because it's all the most important.
It's all number 1. I love it.
It's all number 1. And the same is true for this.
It's
and
true.
Once again, I know what it's like to be the person who has never invested in a coach, who has never spent $10, nonetheless $100, nonetheless $1,000, nonetheless $10,000 plus on coaching. But I can tell you from experience that the reason why courses, coaching, masterminds, and programs are there is to help you get to where you want to go faster and to have that support. Because God knows on this journey, this can be challenging, feel isolating, feel hard, feel a lot. And having somebody else there to tell you that you're not crazy sure feels good. And the thing that changed this all for me was when I hired my first coach. It was a Brandon coach, and it was for $2,000. And I almost get emotional thinking about this because it was my very first call with him, and $2,000 felt like $1 million for me at the time. I did not have much money, but I was all in on myself and my dream and my brand. So I'm ready to take this to the next level. And for the longest time, my friends, my family, everybody around me was like, Rob, I just don't understand what you do. I don't understand how you make money, the whole Bacon Sports thing. And they didn't understand my dream. And it's not up to them to understand my vision. So when the whole world is just saying, Rob, what are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? I worked with that coach, and on the very first call, he's like, yeah, Rob, tell me about your dream. Tell me about what you're building. And he's like, cool, I got it. Let's make it happen. And for the first time in my life, I felt heard and seen by someone who was there to be a champion for me on my journey of making everything happen. And it was like the world went from black and white to color, where there was just somebody else being like, boom, I'm Team Karen, I'm Team Rob. And coaches are there to help you succeed, that they are champions for you. And that's what I love. I'm on both the receiving and giving end of coaching, because who would I be to be a coach to not actually receive a ton of coaching myself? 100%. And it's the gift that keeps on giving, because I both love helping people, as well as I love learning from the people who know more than I do to help me accelerate what I'm doing.
So great. So what are you doing next? What's next on the horizon for Rob Cressy? And then please tell everybody how we can find you, how they can find you.
So if you've made it this far, I would love to hear from you, because here's a crazy thing. So often we're told to, where can everybody connect? One of the success leaves breadcrumbs for me is if I find someone that I resonate with, I hit them up. Why? Because they just might respond back. And I am one of those people, and so are you, because that's how we got here. So you can hit me up on Instagram, LinkedIn, or Facebook at Rob Cressy. I've got a podcast called Built for the Game, all around helping you grow your business and life together. And if you're someone who's looking for a coach to help you create everything that you want in your life, in your business, and in your life together, I would love to be a champion for you. Hit me up, rob@robcressy.com.
Love it. Thank you so much, Rob, for taking the time to talk to us today and for all of your wisdom. I really appreciate you.
Thanks for having me. I really enjoyed this.
Me too.
Thank you for being here and listening to my show. If you got any value at all, it would mean the world if you shared it and left a review. Remember, the only way to create the life you love is to take it one day at a time. Create today. God bless you.